know that over the past week, I've had a number of bloggers and broadcasters on talking about quarterback battles across the nation. There's a slew of them, as there always are, at some key schools. In addition to that, anything that's catching your eye in terms of any kind of national storyline right now?
Well, I think the two quarterback battles to keep an eye on during the offseason are at Clemson and Georgia for the same reason. And that is, you have a young quarterback there that in both spots that led his team to the playoffs, but is facing who many people think is the top high school quarterback in the country coming in. And in Kelly Bryant's case at Clemson, he's actually facing the last two kids to be ranked number one in the country. Hunter Johnson was number one in 2017. You know, Trevor Lawrence is kind of shared number one in this class with Justin Fields. So if you look at the way Kelly Bryant played in the playoffs, clearly that's where they, for the first time, really felt the drop-off between him and Deshaun Watson when you compare how he played against Alabama's defense. And I would argue the Alabama defenses Deshaun Watson played against the last 2 years were better, much better than this one, actually. So I think he's going to be looking over his shoulder, and I will be fascinated, Mark, to see how Georgia navigates Jake Fromm and Justin Fields. That to me is not your typical battle where the guy that's, you know, this isn't Deshaun Watson coming in for, Cliff Stout's kid who's a placeholder former backup. And, you know, it's clear at some point he's the guy they want to quarterback. I mean, Jake Fromm took this program, by the throat last year. He was a force of nature. And to have a young man like Justin Fields with all the accolades sitting there over his shoulder, I think it will be fascinating to see how Kirby Smart navigates that well into next season, even after the season gets underway. I mean, the first time Jake Fromm has a bad game, what are the fans going to say? Is it time to move on? So I think those are the two big quarterback battles I'm the most interested in because the status of those teams and what they mean in terms of the national championship race, and they both already have established starters who have legitimate competition on campus, which I think makes for unique situations.
To your point, although he was not carrying the load, Jake Fromm was also not a caretaker of this team in any way, shape, or form. Down the stretch against very good defenses, he was throwing at a 65% clip. He was not turning the ball over. He was throwing for 225 a game. The Oklahoma game was an extremely clean game out of him. When they needed him to tie the game and put together a 2-minute drive at the end of the game, he did it with his arm and his legs, made brilliant plays in that game against the Sooners. So that's certainly intrigues me because Justin Fields is just that good, and Jake Fromm is very good, maybe not special, but tested and proven. On the flip side, you got the Kelly Bryant situation in which he gave us pretty much what I expected originally. But when I saw him throw the ball against Louisville, it was the first test that they had of the season. They let him drive it downfield, and he was on point. He looked really good in that game. And it took me from the place where I was prior to the DeAndre Francois injury, where I bought into they've got the experienced quarterback. Florida State's going to be back. Clemson's going to basically win 10 games on defense and running game, lose the showdown against Florida State. They're out of the playoff. Well, they flipped the script. Bryant, I thought he was going to be capable down the stretch. They played that Auburn game in which he was able to just basically manage the game, hand it off. The defense was spectacular with 11 sacks. Then they let him open it up against Louisville, and I thought, okay, they're bringing this kid along, and he's going to be pretty good. Not Deshaun Watson good, but really, really good. And he just never developed into that quarterback, and he certainly had some injuries nick him up throughout the course of the season as well.
You're right. And if you go to the most important game on the schedule, though, where they weren't going to just be able to dominate the line of scrimmage, that the best they could hope for was a stalemate. And then you have to hope your quarterback can make winning plays. And we saw Deshaun Watson against arguably the two most talented defenses Nick Saban's had at Alabama, which is saying something. And in back-to-back years, he threw for over 800 yards combined with an 8-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So that's where we really felt the difference. And that's why I think Kelly Bryant, I think he could be in trouble as we get into the season. And there's other quarterback battles around the country, but most of those are places where a starter has to be replaced, like a Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold at UCLA and USC. These two are unique because these are going to be two of the top, certainly top 10, maybe top 5 programs, depending on how much people think of what Georgia lost. I think Clemson, in my view, is number 1. But these will be two of the top 5 or 10 programs heading in. They will be favored to get back into the playoff hunt, and they both return experienced, proven quarterbacks that are each, though, facing competition from 5 stars that just arrived on campus.
He is Steve Deace from Michigan Podcast. Join him on the audio version of his podcast weekly at SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. You get to see the full production, though, on YouTube. So just check out Michigan Podcast on YouTube as well. And we get to track him down as much as we possibly can to talk college football. Steve, we appreciate the breakdown, and it's always a pleasure.
You got it, brother.